I was buried in paperwork at my desk when my phone buzzed beside me. Kyle's name lit up the screen. Strange, he usually sent a message first. I picked up. The instant he spoke, I knew something was off. His voice trembled. "Aaron, you might want to sit down." "I already am," I said, gripping the phone tighter. "What is it?" He exhaled hard. "It's Joyce. She's at a club right now, and trust me, you're not going to like what I saw." A chill crawled down my spine. "What the hell is she doing at a club?" Kyle hesitated. "She's dancing." I almost scoffed. "Dancing?" Then his voice dropped. "It's not just dancing, man. It's basically public foreplay. She's all over some guy. He's touching her like they're alone. And Paul, yeah, our Paul, is cheering them on." My grip on the phone tightened. "Paul," I echoed, my brain refusing to keep up. "Yep, Linda too, and a bunch of our so-called friends. They're just watching, laughing like it's a freaking comedy show." I didn't want to call, but I figured you'd want to know. My blood ran cold. This had to be a sick joke. Joyce couldn't be doing this. A message buzzed in. Kyle sent me the location, Crystal Globe. Without even thinking, I grabbed my jacket and stormed out. I barely remember the drive. Just a blur of red lights and sharp turns, Kyle's words echoing in my head like gunshots. Paul, Linda, watching her, laughing. I parked in front of the club, neon lights flickering off my windshield. The bass thudded through the walls like a heartbeat. I walked in. Kyle was waiting by the entrance. He didn't say anything, just pointed toward the dance floor. And that's when I saw her. Joyce, moving against him. Zachary, the same college ex who dumped her before she met me. His hands roamed her waist as their bodies moved like this was routine for them. Familiar. Intimate. Then she turned. They kissed. Full on. His hand wrapped around her neck like he owned her. And she didn't resist. Around them, Paul, Linda, a few other friends. Laughing, clapping, cheering. Like this was their Saturday night entertainment. My body moved before I even realized it. One moment I was watching, the next I was in front of them. Joyce turned her head toward me, slowly, casually, like I was interrupting her favorite song. Her eyes flicked with surprise, just for a moment. Then came a smile. "Aaron," she said, as if amused. I raised my hand, silencing her before she could launch into whatever half-hearted apology or lie she had prepared. "Don't," I said, my voice colder than ice. "You're not sorry, and I don't want to hear it. I'll give you time later to feel sorry. Right now, I'm talking." The smile faltered. I turned to Paul and Linda. "You clapped like this was a show. Like watching my wife grind on another man was some kind of act," I said, stepping toward them, my voice deadly calm. "Let's get one thing straight. From this moment on, you're not my friends. You're just another part of the trash I need to take out." Paul looked down. Linda paled. "Good." I faced Joyce again. "How long?" She hesitated, then lowered her head, fingers playing with the strap of her dress. She almost looked ashamed, almost. Then she whispered, 3 months since he came back. 3 months. 3 months of lying in bed next to me, laughing with me, pretending. I clenched my jaw. She straightened, her voice firmer now. "I was going to tell you. I want a divorce." I let out a dry laugh. "No need. You'll get everything you deserve, Joyce. I promise you that." Her mouth opened, but I cut her off again, stepping close. "Do not, ever, set foot in my house. Not for your stuff. Not for closure. Not for a damn thing. If you do, you'll be dealing with a lot more than just a divorce lawyer." Zachary stepped forward, his posture tense. "Are you threatening her?" I locked eyes with him. "Absolutely. If she comes to my house, I'll invoke the castle doctrine." "Look it up." He froze. Just for a second. But I saw it. He knew I meant it. The music blared around us, but in my head, everything was still. I turned and walked out. The cold night hit me like a wall, but it couldn't touch the fire in my veins. I climbed into my car and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Douglas Lemus speaking. "Doug, it's Aaron. I need your expertise. My wife wants a divorce, and I want to make sure she regrets ever asking for one." A low chuckle answered me. "You called the right guy." He wasn't wrong. Doug listened to every word without a single interruption. He didn't need to. He was absorbing, calculating. When I finished telling him everything, he let out a satisfied hum. "You've already mapped out most of this," he said. "I like that." I leaned back in my seat, my hand gripping the steering wheel. "The house is mine. Bought it before the marriage. It's legally off limits." "And the business?" Doug asked. "My father's. On paper, I'm just a salaried employee. She can't touch it." Doug chuckled, impressed. "Smart. That leaves joint accounts." I smirked. Already emptied them. Stopped by the bank on my way home and cleared everything out. He whistled through his teeth. You do realize she's going to come after you for alimony? She can try, I said coolly. She'll get whatever the court decides. Not a cent more. But until then, she gets nothing. Doug laughed. Damn, Aaron. You're colder than I remember. I didn't reply. I wasn't playing fair anymore. That guy was gone. After I hung up, I drove straight home. But stepping into the house didn't feel the same. It wasn't home anymore. It was a war zone I had just reclaimed. I stood there for a moment in the quiet, and then I pulled out my phone again. Another number I hadn't dialed in years. Jacob. He picked up on the second ring. Well, he said with a chuckle. If it ain't the devil himself. I smiled. Got a job for you and the boys. Can you be here in 30? A pause. Then a laugh. Sounds like fun. We're on our way. Exactly 29 minutes later, Jacob arrived with his crew, men I had served with in the Marines. Brothers in arms. Men who understood precision, loyalty, and the sweet taste of calculated revenge. Jacob was the first one out, cracking his knuckles. All right, what's the op? I nodded toward the house. Everything that belongs to Joyce, I want it out. But don't just pack it. I want it treated. Jose, the fastest to catch on, grinned wide. You want us to send a message? Exactly, I said. Every piece of clothing, I want a boot print on it before it gets folded. Jacob whistled. Cold-blooded. I like it. They got to work like clockwork. The house filled with the sound of boots thudding against floors, drawers being yanked open, boxes being stuffed. I watched with satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. Jose held up her wedding dress, stretching it between his fingers. Special handling for this. I crossed my arms. Yeah, make sure it reeks. He grinned, took a deep swig of chewing tobacco, and then spat directly onto the lace. The dark brown stain spread instantly. But he wasn't done. With a devilish smirk, he unzipped his pants. Might as well add a little personal touch. I said nothing as he relieved himself right onto the white fabric, soaking it through. When he was finished, he bundled it up and stuffed it at the bottom of the clothes pile. Perfect, I muttered. A slow, satisfied grin crept across my face. Then, a knock at the door. I didn't even need to look. I knew who it was. I opened it slowly, and there she stood, Victoria, Joyce's mother. Behind her, like two cockroaches sneaking in behind an open door, were Paul and Linda. I didn't even let them speak. I pointed toward the porch, where Joyce's boxes were stacked. Before you crawl back to your car, do her a favor. Take those boxes. If you don't, they're staying out here to rot. Paul opened his mouth. I stared him down. He shut it and looked away. Linda grabbed his arm, and the two of them skulked off in silence, dragging the boxes with them. I stepped aside, letting Victoria in. She entered slowly, taking in the house, now completely stripped of any trace of her daughter. Her eyes lingered on the empty picture frames and the lifeless air. She sighed. I'm not here to defend her, she said softly, wringing her hands. I just came to say she does love him. But I think she also loved you. I let out a bitter chuckle. If she ever loved me, she wouldn't have gone crawling back to the man who left her behind in college. Victoria flinched. 5 years, I continued. 5 years of marriage, and I was just the safe option. A placeholder. And now that her ex came back, I'm disposable. She sniffled and wiped her eye. I know how you feel, Aaron. I've tried to talk sense into her, but I cut her off. You don't have to. I don't want her back. She made her choice. And now I'll make sure she lives with it. Victoria's face tensed. You're not going to hurt her, are you? I smiled. No warmth in it. Not unless she tries to hurt me. Physically? No. Emotionally? Financially? That's already in motion. She exhaled, relief washing over her features, but it didn't last. Those 5 years, I said, stepping closer. She's not the only one who's going to pay. The people who laughed at my pain, who treated my life like a joke, they're next. Victoria swallowed, eyes dimming. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she whispered. I hugged her, felt her frail form shaking. I'm sorry, I whispered. But your daughter's about to learn a very harsh lesson. When I pulled away, she dabbed at her eyes and smiled. Weak, but real. I can't undo what she did, Aaron, she said. But you'll always be like a son to me. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. She took a deep breath and left. And then the real reckoning began. Victoria sat alone in her dimly lit living room that night, the soft hum of the lamp casting long shadows across the floor. A cup of tea rested on the table beside her, untouched, now cold. She had been replaying our conversation over and over in her mind. And then the front door opened. Joyce strolled in like nothing had happened. Her heels clicked against the hardwood, her posture smug, her expression indifferent. Right behind her was Zachary, wearing a grin like he'd just pulled off the biggest victory of his life. They didn't look ashamed, not even a hint of regret, just a pair of people basking in the ruins they had caused. Victoria looked up, her gaze heavy, her voice weary. Joyce! Joyce groaned as she kicked off her heels and collapsed on the couch. Oh, come on, Mom. Don't start. He'll get over it. Aaron's always been the quiet, bottle-it-up type. Victoria's expression darkened. Get over it, she repeated, her tone razor-sharp. He walked into a club and saw you draped all over the man who once abandoned you. Joyce rolled her eyes. Please. He'll move on. I've already spoken to a lawyer. We'll have the paperwork filed by next week. Zachary slung his arm over her shoulder. That's right. She's taking the house and half the business. Victoria's gaze remained fixed, unmoving. You really think it's going to be that simple? Joyce flipped her hair and smiled. We've got plans, Mom. Zach and we're going to live in Aaron's house. Make it ours. And once we get our cut from the business, we'll sell it and start fresh. Our dream. Remember, Zach? From college. Zachary nodded eagerly. Already talking about opening our own place. Victoria said nothing for a moment. Then she laughed, not the light, pleasant kind. No, it was a bitter, chilling laugh. One that made Zachary visibly twitch. She shook her head slowly, then met their eyes. The best-laid plans of mice and men. Joyce blinked. What? Robert Burns, Victoria said quietly. A poem about how plans, no matter how carefully laid, often end in ruin. Zachary snorted. You quoting poetry now? Victoria rose from the couch, smoothing her dress as she stood tall. You'll understand soon enough. Then she walked away, leaving them behind in the silence of their delusions. 2 days later, I was parked a block away from Joyce's office, sipping my coffee as the sun rose. The air was cool, the morning quiet, but I could feel the storm brewing. Right on cue, a man in a black suit stepped through the front doors of the building. Philip, a professional process server I had hired, quick, discreet, and dramatic when needed. I watched from my car as he walked into the office complex. A few minutes passed, then I saw him approach Joyce's desk. I wasn't there to see her face when he handed her the envelope, but I didn't need to. I could already imagine the confusion on her face, the way her eyes scanned the words on the petition, the slow horror building as she read, grounds for divorce, adultery. Philip would have smiled politely, like he always did. Mrs. Joyce Peterson, he'd ask, as though this was just another delivery. She'd nod, distracted. Then, with that same calm voice, you've been served. Have a nice day. I smirked, picturing her stunned silence. A quiet office. Co-workers pausing, pretending not to watch, while they whispered the scandal that was about to burn through the town like wildfire. Inside that envelope, not just papers, evidence. Crystal clear photos from the club. Joyce, Zachary, lip-locked, clinging to each other like teenagers. She could scream all she wanted, but those pictures didn't lie. I watched from the car as she stumbled toward her boss's office. Right on time. Brandon, her boss, an old friend of mine, the man who once told me, years ago, don't trust that woman, Aaron. Back then, I didn't listen. Today I did. She must have asked him for the day off, because not 2 minutes later, she left the building, pale-faced and visibly shaken. She walked like her legs couldn't decide whether to hold her up or give out. My phone rang. Brandon. I answered. It's done. I asked. She's headed home, he said. Looked like she'd seen a ghost. Perfect, I replied. Stick to the plan. He chuckled. Oh, buddy, you're a bad man. Let's call it justice. Next stop was a cozy little cafe. Wooden booths, fresh pastries, quiet music. I walked in, ordered a donut and black coffee, then sat by the window and waited. The world outside moved on like it always did. People laughed, hurried past on their way to work. But in one corner of town, someone's world was collapsing. My phone buzzed again. Joyce. Right on schedule. I answered, lifting my coffee with my free hand. You son of a bitch, she screamed through the phone. You're trying to ruin me. I stirred my coffee calmly. Good morning to you too. Cut the crap, Aaron. I saw the papers. Where's my name on the house? The business? Where's my half? I sipped slowly, savoring the moment. Then I said, your half disappeared the day you opened your legs for someone else. Silence. Then a sharp, choking gasp. You bastard. I leaned back in my chair, watching a couple walk by hand in hand outside the window. Smiling, laughing, trusting. What a beautiful thing loyalty is, I murmured. Anything you want, I continued. Ask your lover. Maybe he can buy you that dream house you thought you'd steal from me. Her breath was ragged. The fury oozed from every pause. And just so you know, I added, there's now a restraining order in place. You and your boyfriend are legally forbidden from stepping near my home or business. I heard her inhale, probably winding up for another outburst. Click. I ended the call. Took another bite of my donut. Still warm. Still perfect. And just like that, one battle was over. But the war? It was only just beginning. With Joyce silenced for the moment, it was time to focus on the traitors who had laughed at my pain. Paul and Linda. Before I dive in, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Aaron Peterson. I served 5 years in the Marines. Did my time in Afghanistan. Was stationed in Saudi for a while. After retiring, I came home and took over my father's business, a modest but essential IT firm. We weren't flashy, but in a town like ours, we didn't need to be. We were the backbone of every small company within 50 miles. Paul ran a local manufacturing business. Linda owned an accounting firm. They were clients, and supposedly friends. But the night they stood there, clapping and cheering for my cheating wife and her lover, they chose their side. Now, they'd pay for it. The irony? Both of their contracts with my company had expired 2 weeks prior. I had known this was coming, planned for it. I didn't remind them. I didn't renew. I let them keep using our systems like everything was normal. What they didn't know was their entire infrastructure, emails, databases, internal systems, was hanging by a thread, and I was about to cut it. I returned to my office, cracked my knuckles, and fired up the dashboard that controlled all client services. Paul expired. Linda expired. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled, and breathed in the moment. Their data was all still hosted on our servers, their equipment still leased. One keystroke, and I could erase years of their work. Time to tighten the noose. I grabbed my phone and called Mark, our client manager. Hey Aaron, he answered quickly. What's up? I've got a task, I said evenly. Send formal notices to Paul and Linda. Let them know their contracts expired. Give them 48 hours to back up their data. On the third day, we purge everything. Retrieve the leased hardware, too. There was a pause, then a short, impressed whistle. Damn, you're serious. Dead serious, I replied. And don't offer them any renewal options. No deals. No extensions. You want professional, Mark said, or a little poetic twist. Keep it professional, I said with a grin, but add a line reminding them how many renewal emails they ignored. He chuckled. Fair enough. They're gonna panic. That's the idea, I said. Let them feel what betrayal tastes like. You know, Mark added, we did send them multiple reminders. Monthly, weekly even. They just assumed you'd renew them like always. They assumed wrong, I said. That kind of loyalty died the moment they laughed in my face. Mark got to work, and within the hour, the emails were sent. 2 days later, my phone buzzed nonstop. First up, Paul. I let it ring a while before answering. I leaned back, relaxed, smiling like I was taking a call from an old friend, not the man I was about to destroy. Aaron, what the hell is going on? Paul shouted before I could even speak. Your people showed up and took our computers. Where's our data? How do I access anything? You can't do this. I waited for him to exhaust his outrage. It didn't take long. Then I said calmly, Paul, what contract are you talking about? You mean the one that expired weeks ago? He sputtered. You didn't tell us. I cut him off. We did. Multiple times. You ignored every message. So now, I'm ignoring you. And then I hung up. Not 5 minutes passed before the next call came in. Linda. I sighed and answered. Yes, Linda. Her voice was frantic. Aaron, please. You can't do this to me. My whole client database is gone. I said nothing at first. Just looked at the monitor, where her firm's data was queued up on my system. One button. I pressed enter. Files began vanishing from the server. I'm still here, I said, casually bringing the phone back to my ear. Hold on just a second. More files disappeared. And then, I smiled. Well, I said, it's done. What did you do? She shrieked. My clients. My documents. I'll be ruined. Then maybe explain to them, I said coldly, that you failed to renew your IT contract, and your provider had every legal right to purge the data. Pause. Then I added, have a wonderful day, Linda. And I hung up. I leaned back and let the silence wash over me. 2 down. Now, only 2 remained, Joyce and her beloved Zachary. But this next part, it required patience and precision. Joyce did what I expected her to do next. She tried to fight me in court. She came in swinging, dragging her lawyer behind her like a chihuahua on a leash. They wanted everything. The house, my business, even alimony. She wanted to play the victim, to rewrite history in her favor. Too bad I had written the ending already. My attorney, Quentin Drake, was a seasoned shark, calm, polite, and absolutely lethal when it mattered. He opened the hearing with a crisp voice that sliced through the courtroom. "Your Honor," he began, "we'd like to establish that the property in question, the residence, was purchased solely by my client before the marriage. It remains in his name." Joyce's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. The judge raised a brow. "Is there any documentation to the contrary?" A sigh. "No, Your Honor." Strike one. Next came the business. They argued that since I owned a profitable tech company, Joyce was entitled to half. Quentin straightened his jacket and smiled. "Your Honor, my client does not own a business. He is employed by his father's firm. He earns a modest wage." The judge looked to me. "Mr. Peterson, can you confirm your income?" I nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I make about $1,000 per month." Joyce whipped her head toward me, jaw slack. It was the first time in months I had seen her look completely unprepared. "My client's pay stubs for the last 12 months are here," Quentin continued, handing over the folder. "As you'll see, he earns significantly less than the petitioner." The judge flipped through the pages, looked up at Joyce. "Miss Peterson, based on this, I find no grounds for you to claim ownership of any assets." Strike two. Then came the twist of the knife. Quentin adjusted his tie, casually flipping to the next section. "Furthermore, Your Honor, given that the petitioner was the higher-earning spouse and was the one who violated the marital contract via infidelity, we're requesting spousal support in favor of Mr. Peterson." Joyce slammed her hands on the table. "What?" The judge's gavel came down with a sharp crack. "Order." Her lawyer scrambled. "Your Honor, this is unusual, but not without precedent." The judge cut in. "Miss Peterson, given the circumstances, I hereby order spousal support in the amount of $500 per month for 2 years or until Mr. Peterson remarries, whichever comes first." Joyce turned beet red. Her jaw clenched so tight I thought she'd break a tooth. Strike three. I stood up, barely containing my smile. Outside the courtroom, Joyce stormed up to me, eyes blazing. "You manipulated everything." I tilted my head. "No, I just let the truth take its natural course." "You think this is over?" she hissed. I chuckled. "Oh no, I know it's over." And I walked away, free man, head held high, one step closer to closing this chapter forever. 3 months later, the final decree arrived, divorce finalized. I was officially free. Time for the final play. I dialed Brandon, Joyce's former boss. He picked up immediately. "So," he asked. "It's done," I said. "I'm free. You want drinks?" I smirked. "Not just yet. First, I need to meet with Logan Peterson." Brandon paused. "Your uncle?" "The judge." I laughed. "Small town, huh?" He let out a stunned laugh. "Jesus. So you knew Joyce was doomed from day one." "I never give enemies room to breathe," I said. "And her lawyer?" "Harry. From my mother's side." "Old Harry," Brandon exclaimed. "Yep," I said. She walked into a courtroom completely unarmed and didn't even know it. Brandon was still laughing. "That's cold, man. Drinks tomorrow night." "I'm buying." "Deal," I said. "But first, I've got to prep her exit." Brandon nodded. "You know her lover, Zachary? Works for Mr. Patel." "Already spoke to him," I replied. "Told him everything." Brandon whistled. "That guy's going to explode. He's firing Zach today. No letter of recommendation. Nothing." I hung up the call. Joyce's world was unraveling piece by piece, and I hadn't even lifted a finger since the decree. A week passed. It was a quiet Wednesday evening when I heard a knock at the door. I already knew who it would be. I opened it to find Victoria standing on my porch, her face unreadable. "Hi, Aaron," she said softly. "Come in," I replied. She stepped into the living room, sat down slowly on the couch, and smoothed her skirt with her hands. Her eyes looked heavy, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "I don't even know how to say this," she began, offering a fragile smile. "But Joyce is a mess." I leaned back into my chair, my voice calm. Not surprising. She lit every bridge she had on fire. Victoria nodded. "Yes, but it's more than that. She's planning to leave town." I let out a dry chuckle. "Good. The farther, the better." She looked at me, her eyes serious. "No, Aaron. She didn't just burn bridges. She walked across the wrong one." Our eyes locked, and I saw something shift behind her expression, a mixture of sorrow and grim acceptance. I took a slow breath. I'm not sorry for anything I did. Victoria nodded. You don't have to be. She betrayed you. She disrespected your marriage. She took you for granted. She did, I said flatly. Victoria leaned in, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Paul and Linda, they're getting divorced. I raised an eyebrow. Really? She nodded slowly. They're turning on each other, blaming one another for everything. The business collapse, the lawsuits. I let out a low whistle. Lawsuits? Clients are coming after them, she said. Hundreds of thousands in damages, maybe millions. Their companies are finished. I leaned back, arms crossed. They deserve every bit of it. She hesitated for a moment. And Zachary? I tilted my head. What about him? She sighed. He already left. Packed his things and took off 2 days ago. Coward. That's not even the worst part, she continued. Before he left, he and Joyce had a huge fight. It got loud, ugly. I stared at her. Did he hit her? Victoria didn't answer at first. Then she gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Yes, he slapped her. I sat quietly, letting that image settle in. The woman I had once loved, pampered, protected, now being abused by the very man she threw everything away for. And her mother just stood there. I didn't step in, Victoria said quietly. I just watched. She was trembling slightly now, not from fear, but from grief. You did nothing wrong, I said. That's the consequence of her choices. Victoria studied me, then slowly stood. I should get going. I stood too. Take care of yourself, Victoria. She gave me one last look, sad, maybe even affectionate, and smiled. Goodbye, Aaron. She walked out of my house, out of my life. And for the first time in years, the silence that followed didn't feel empty. Peace at last. Life has a strange way of settling scores. After everything, I finally found myself waking up without dread in my chest. No more lies. No more betrayal. Just stillness. And peace. My home, once haunted by ghosts of broken trust, now felt whole again. Quiet. Yes, but not lonely. And for the first time, I could finally focus on the things that mattered. One of them? Dogs. I had always wanted German Shepherds, but Joyce hated the idea. Funny, really. I had married a woman who hated dogs, and in the end, I realized the only bitch in my house had been her. So I drove out to a breeder a couple of towns over and picked up 2 gorgeous pups, siblings, a male and a female. I named them Titan and Luna. Titan was fearless, always on alert. Luna was sharp, observant, calculated. They became my shadows. Wherever I went, they followed. They slept at the foot of my bed, waited by the door when I left, and reminded me every day that unconditional love didn't have to come from a human being. With them, my home felt alive. My morning runs, better. My mood, lighter. My smile, more frequent than it had been in years. And then came Emily. I met Emily in the most unexpected way, or rather, Titan and Luna did. It was a crisp Saturday morning. I had taken the dogs to the local park, not expecting much beyond some sunshine and quiet. But the moment we arrived, they bolted toward another German Shepherd already tugging on a stick twice his size. A woman sat on the nearby bench, sipping coffee, laughing as the dogs tangled themselves up in a full-blown tug-of-war. I jogged over, ready to apologize, but before I could say a word, she smiled. Looks like we've got a team forming, she said with a warm grin. Guess so, I replied, catching my breath. Sorry if they're being too rough. She waved it off. Are you kidding? This is the happiest he's been all week. I looked at her dog, a strong-looking shepherd with intelligent eyes. What's his name? Rex. I smiled. Titan. Luna. I added, pointing at my 2 goofballs. We ended up talking for over an hour, just sitting on that bench, watching our dogs wrestle and play like old friends. Emily was refreshing. No pretenses. No passive-aggressive digs. Just calm confidence, kindness, and a dry sense of humor that matched mine perfectly. She was sharp, a lawyer, but the kind that fought for kids in family court, not someone who'd sell her soul for billable hours. Nothing about her reminded me of Joyce. And that was exactly what I needed. We started meeting at the dog park regularly. Then came texts. Then coffee. Then a lazy Sunday hike with 3 shepherds charging ahead of us like they owned the world. There were no games, no mixed signals. Just 2 people enjoying each other's company, and the silence in between. She never asked about Joyce. Never pried. But she could read me like a book, and I think she knew the story without needing the pages. One night, while we cooked dinner together, her slicing vegetables, Me grilling chicken while the dogs hovered like furry vacuum cleaners. She glanced up and asked, "Is this peace or boredom?" I thought about it, and I smiled. "Peace," I said. Finally, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat on my porch. Titan lay at my feet, Luna curled beside her brother, and Rex snored gently beside Emily. She held a glass of wine, legs pulled up under her, and leaned her head against my shoulder. "You look happy," she said softly. I turned to her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long, long while, I realized. I am, I said simply. No need to elaborate. No more stories of betrayal or bitterness. That part of my life was behind me. I had peace. I had loyalty. And I had the quiet joy of rediscovering who I really was. Not through revenge, but through healing. As the weeks passed, life became delightfully uneventful. No unexpected phone calls, no screaming matches, no betrayals hiding behind text messages. Just morning walks with the dogs, quiet evenings with Emily, and the steady rhythm of living on my own terms. Then, one ordinary afternoon, I received an unexpected call from a blocked number. Curiosity got the better of me. I answered. "Hello." A beat of silence. Then a familiar, fragile voice came through. "Aaron." It was Joyce. I said nothing at first, just stared ahead, listening to the sound of her breathing, shaky, uncertain. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from," she continued. "But I didn't know who else to call." I said nothing. She went on. "Zach's gone. I don't even know where he is. My name's trashed. I can't find a job. Everyone I thought was a friend cut me off." Still, I didn't speak. Then came the plea. Quiet, cracked. "I need help. Just for a little while. Alone, anything. Please." I took a slow breath. "You once told your mother I'd get over it," I said calmly. "That I'd pick up the pieces and move on." She said nothing. I continued. "Well, you were right. I did. I just didn't expect you to be one of the pieces I left behind." She tried to say something else, but I ended the call before she could. I stood in front of the mirror that night, brushing my teeth as Titan nudged my leg and Luna curled up by the door. Emily was in the other room, laughing at something on TV. Rex's tail thudded against the couch. And I realized this was it. This was what happiness looked like. Not grand gestures, not revenge, not proving a point. Just the quiet presence of people and animals who gave back the love you offered. There's no neat bow on life. There are frayed ends, unresolved chapters, names you never hear again. But peace doesn't need perfection. It just needs truth. And I had finally found mine. Dear listeners, if this story struck a chord, let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories just like this. Until next time, stay sharp, stay kind, and never settle for less than what you deserve.